By the end of this video, you should be able to answer the following questions. Number 1, what is white light made of? Number 2, how can we use light to identify elements? Number 3, what is spectroscopy? And number 4, how do you decipher which elements are in a spectral pattern? Today we're going to focus on a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum known as visible light. All of the wavelengths of light put together create white light. Isaac Newton's experiment in 1665 showed that a prism bends visible light and that each color refracts at a slightly different angle depending on the wavelength of the color. Each color in a rainbow corresponds to a different wavelength of electromagnetic spectrum, and these range from about 380 nanometers to 700 nanometers. Close examination of the visible light spectrum from our sun and other stars reveals a pattern of dark lines called absorption lines. Certain elements in the sun's atmosphere absorb certain colors of light. These patterns of lines within spectra act like fingerprints for atoms and molecules. More research uncovered that each element on the periodic table would absorb or emit certain colors on the visible light spectrum in a unique order. Every single element had a different pattern. Scientists were amazed and could now tell the chemical composition of celestial bodies all across the universe. And thus, spectroscopy was born. Spectroscopy is the investigation and measurement of spectra produced by matter interacting with or emitting electromagnetic radiation. Basically, scientists can use the visible light spectra of the electromagnetic spectrum and study the patterns of light coming from an object in space and be able to tell what elements are present. Pretty cool, huh? Let's put on our lab coats and take a crack at identifying the elements in certain stars. Let's start with a nearby star. Look at the star's spectrum and try to match it with two element spectrums you see on the right. An easy way to compare is to move the individual element spectrum under the star spectrum to see if all the lines match up. In order to get a match, you have to make a complete connection with all the elements' spectral pattern. Hopefully you can see that hydrogen is in this star. All the lines match up. Let's look at one that isn't a match, just to get that perspective. See how sodium doesn't quite line up with the star's spectral pattern? That's because this star isn't producing sodium yet. Now let's look at helium. Can you tell it's a match? So the two elements in this star are hydrogen and helium. Okay, now you try one. Look at this star spectrum and match the individual elements to it. How many can you find? Pause here and try it out. Did you find all of them? If you did, great job. If not, go back and match up each individual element. Next up is our lab, so I hope this was a great intro for you. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.